Welcome to Garden Chatter. I'm your host, Adam Cortell, and I am very excited tonight. We have another set of fantastic guests, and we'll get to them in just a moment. If you're joining us, we started a little bit late. We had a few technical difficulties. Tonight we literally have a guest from around the world, and so it's awesome that we all are able to get together here. So let me introduce my co-host, Bren. Bren, how are you doing tonight?
I'm very well, Adam. It's 11 o'clock here, so drinking some coffee. But I'm really excited. I could not sleep the last few nights knowing that Debra and Fran were going to be with us tonight. They are two amazing garden writers and floral arrangement experts and landscape experts, and we got the real deal here. It's awesome.
Yeah, and Debra, you are up in Seattle. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm in Seattle, and it is sort of winter here, but I'm happy to talk about winter floral arranging, so it's actually really appropriate. Hi, Adam, and hi, Bren, and I'll in advance greet our other guests. Hi, Fran.
Fran.
Hi.
And Fran, you're coming from, joining us from most of the way around the world, and you want to tell about where you're at?
Yeah, I'm in Tel Aviv. I'm from Philadelphia much of the year because I have two children who live here. So I've gone from East Coast gardening to Mediterranean gardening the past 5 years. A challenge and exciting. And flowers, I would say in Israel, it's one of their biggest industries, and it's just phenomenal. So I've had a blast with flowers. I have a lot to talk about with that.
That's great. So if you're an audience member joining us and you'd like to leave a question or comment, go ahead and click on the screen and then look up on the top right-hand corner of your screen, and you should see a little square with like a 3x3 grid on it. Go ahead and click on that, and you should see the Q&A box. And you can leave us a question or comment, and then Fran and Debra could answer it. Well, let's see. Why don't we go ahead and just jump on in. Is there anything else we need to cover, Bren, or should we get rolling? We started a little late.
I think we're good. We've got a lot to cover tonight,
Okay.
So let's get rolling.
All right. So, Debra, we're going to go ahead and show some of the photos that you shared with me. Do you want to tell a little bit about what we're going to cover with those?
Oh, sure. I have been doing a lot of centerpiece and garland and wreath designs over the last several years. Of course, I'm really focused on using what is seasonally available from my own garden or from that elements I can glean from my neighbors with permission, of course, or what I can procure from flower farmers in my area. So I just pulled some December arrangements together, including a wreath that I just designed, so that people could sort of get inspired to look at combinations, and we can all just jump in and go through those, I guess. Are you controlling the slides, Adam?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and scroll through them. So
that photo is not from the winter. As you can tell, it's probably from May. That's probably what Fran's got growing in her garden now.
Yep, and you can find Debra at slowflowers.com. So let's go ahead and so I included this slide, and then I believe all the materials that would go into the making of the wreath. I think that's the order I put them in. So.
Well, yeah, you know, things go in and out of fashion, and wreaths are hot right now. There's a brand new book out by Jill Rizzo and Alethea Harampoulos called The Wreath Recipe Book, which is just off the, just published by Artisan, and so they're getting a lot of attention. There's lots of wreath workshops all around the country, and I think the most exciting thing is using what nature drops after the windstorm. So that photo just shows the supplies. I think that's pretty obvious that you can get frames. I'm seeing a lot of grapevine and straw and metal forms available at craft stores and floral supply stores. The reason I like that shot, Adam, is it has a square frame, and Michael's is carrying square frames in 2 sizes, and it's really a modern look. It's not for everybody, but I had fun doing a rosemary wreath on that square frame. So you can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is just a selection of elements that I just harvested this week for a mixed wreath. I like using needle evergreen material and broadleaf evergreen material, mix and match. And you can see in that slide that there's some cedar and some cryptomeria, as well as bay. So if you're in the Mediterranean climate, you could do a really fun bay wreath. And also beautiful camellia in bud. And then there's a little accent there with some rose hips.
Okay, I believe the next slide shows some of them, some of the other materials close up.
Oh yeah, and these are just some details. That's a beautiful cedar. I go back and forth between cutting from my own garden and procuring from flower farmers. I have a lot of access to a lot of farmers in the Northwest. When you say flower farming, it might sound like you have rows and rows of perennials, but if you have access to forest land, you might be farming by harvesting things like cedar boughs and pine and spruce. Most of the public land can be foraged if you get a permit from the state or the federal government. To forage. We couldn't do it necessarily, but there are foragers who do that. This is a golden. I think this is just a golden Chamaecyparis. And then there was some eucalyptus there too, which I'm trying to throw a few things in for Fran so she can talk about decorating with Mediterranean plants. Ilex berries. Ilex is really hot right now, and a lot of it is grown out of Northern California and Oregon. And it's all these new breeds that are specifically for the floral industry. So there's, vivid oranges, vivid pinks, vivid reds, vivid yellows coming online in a couple years. This red ilex was grown by Sun Valley Farms in Eureka and Arcata, that area in Northern California.
Wow, they're very bright.
And then wonderful juniper with those blueberries, which if you ever want to have a foraging expert on it, you can talk to Ellen Zakos. She will tell you what cocktail to make out of those juniper berries. But I like them in decor, and just adding a little texture of silver and then those blueberries is great.
Okay, I have to ask. Can you explain what slow flower is? What does that mean?
Yes, sure. It's Bren, have you heard of the slow food movement? What's going on in the slow food?
Yes, very much. I'm a member of it. Sure.
Yeah, and slow food really, it started in Europe. It started in Italy, and as a sort of an anti-fast food idea of procuring all the ingredients for our meals within a close range of where we live, and then also in season. And so I'm just taking that same idea of slow and applying it to my philosophy of floral design. It happens a lot in gardening and landscaping. Most people are getting access to their nursery plants sourced close to where they live, just because of the potted plants are heavy, and so they can't be shipped. So that hasn't happened so much in gardening, but in cut flowers, because flowers are generally lightweight and can be shipped, there's just been this huge shift in how we source them over the last 3 decades, and so most flowers that are sold commercially in the U.S. are imported from countries like Colombia and Ecuador, and so there's only 20% of the cut flowers sold in the U.S. are grown commercially in the U.S. So I'm really trying to change those numbers. So slow is kind of my antidote to imported flowers.
Awesome, thank you.
My husband thinks it's because they grow slowly. So, that's another answer.
That's what I was thinking that too. But that's just me.
Let me Debra is single-handedly changing the industry. I mean, she really is the American industry. And Debra, I meant to send over this article, which I will link, which we discussed the other day from England.
Oh, right.
She has members, I believe, from England, part of your slow flower movement. I noticed a few.
Yeah, the England, and also I've heard from people in Italy and Germany, and then of course Canada. Canada really is the next tab I'm going to put on the Slow Flowers directory because there's so much going on in cut flower farming and floral design in Canada. It's just, you know, there's so much pride in their whatever they produce in that country anyway that it's natural. And England is the same way. There's this renaissance going on to say we don't want to lose agriculture in our, you know, for food, for fiber, for flowers, you know, all the things that we are, you know, kind of value as the roots of where we live and you know, our generations ahead of us or before us, we have to remind people that flowers are part of agriculture and that's worth saving. So I kind of got off track.
Awesome.
Yeah.
No, that's okay. We got a neat little giveaway going on tonight, and what we asked our audience to do, if you're watching this presentation live, was to either, we'd like you to comment, say hi, or ask a question, and we have Annie Haven, who just did a shout out. Good evening to Adam, me, Fran, and Debra. Great to see you, Annie, kind of, see you. See your little picture.
That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, is Annie on? Is Annie on?
Why don't we jump back to this and we'll continue on with that. So there was a couple more slides, I think, of just some.
Yeah, this is not a quiz. Like my lowest grade in plant ID classes was the winter conifer classes. Oh my gosh, but that was a pine, I can tell you. I know the genus. I'm happy.
I think I know this one.
And there's some rosemary with some golden arborvitae or chamaecyparis. I can't tell what's behind it. But rosemary, you know, in a Mediterranean climate, in California especially, in the U.S., and then where Fran is, and, you know, anybody who's got access to really wonderful, I'm thinking where else? Australia, New Zealand, Chile, you know, anyone who can grow rosemary can decorate with that year-round because it is hardy, winter hardy. It's winter hardy for me in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
Adam, you probably have rosemary growing.
Yeah, it's doing fine so far.
Yeah. Well, so this is, we can just go through these quickly. This is really just the steps to get started on a wreath. I make these individual bunches, little bouquets basically, and then attach them individually to the frame with wire or twine. And just make sure that the sections overlap so that the stick end or the cut end is hidden. And I love something like this because there's literally no rules, especially with wreaths, because really for most Christmas decorations or winter holiday decorations, you only want this on your front door for 3 to 4 weeks. And most cut material, especially evergreen material, will look great for that period of time on the front door where it's not indoors in a heated home drying out. There's enough moisture in the air to keep things looking beautiful. And some people ask if I recommend misting outdoor garlands or outdoor wreaths, and you know, I don't, because I am in a very humid climate in the Northwest. We have so much moisture in the air, but I would say in a dry climate that is something you could try just to keep a little hydration going on your cut material. And there's the finished wreath on my front door, and the accent with the rose hips really gives you that, you know, kind of wintry look.
I think there was a close-up of that, yeah.
Yeah, there it is with the camellia. Yeah. I really, you know, people are frustrated with camellia as a cut flower because it just doesn't last. As you all know, anyone who's had a camellia shrub wants to see those beautiful rose-like flowers, and they just are not happy cut. Maybe you can float one little flower in a dish of water for a day, but when you cut them in bud like that, they really add a different element, and they last for so long. So it's kind of one of those trial and error things. Oh, let's see. What else, Adam? You have a few more slides.
Yeah. There's a couple arrangements.
This is from a workshop I did these are workshop classes that we did with a nursery here in Seattle where we were trying to combine living plants with cut elements. And so this one had a cyclamen in it. The one before that had paper white bulbs that had just been rooted. So the trick with these is really to almost have to section out your container. So there was a section in the middle, a little square pot that had soil in it, so that the living component can be in soil, and then the cut elements are in water on either side. And I put a little ball of chicken wire on either side to stabilize those stems. And those wooden boxes are lined with plastic, so they are watertight. This is one of my favorites, using fruit.
Oh, that's
with
beautiful.
The kumquats and the lady apples. But a friend of mine named Charlotte Benke designed this in my class, and she brought the dried hydrangea flowers from her home to use in the class. So it was a really innovative way to combine what was beautiful in your garden, 3 months ago. You save it as a dry element, and then you can mix it with the fresh greenery, and then even adding the fruit. That hypericum was from California. It wasn't from Oregon or Washington. But now this was a couple years ago, now there are growers producing hypericum closer to home, closer to where we live.
Deborah, which one's the hypericum? It's the
green berries. The St. John. It's the floral version of St. John's wort. And Fran, you've probably seen this growing in Israel too. It's
absolutely.
Really,
and you know what? And back east also we used it.
Yeah, it's a big demand for it on the floral trade, but it's not something home gardeners are necessarily going to grow. The ones that look like this.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just quickly say, I don't want to take up too much time, but I'll just quickly describe what you're seeing here. This garland was designed by a florist who's a member of the slowflowers.com site, which is a directory of florists. Her name is Lori Freistack. She has a business in LA called Blossom Alliance, and we did this garland for a story for the Los Angeles Times last week. I wasn't physically there, but I kind of managed it long distance and was able to write about it. Lori used eucalyptus and pineapple guava foliage that she cut from her garden, and a lot of it she foraged from her neighborhood. And she literally lives off the Miracle Mile, so she's in the most urban kind of LA you can imagine. Then she added beautiful acacia, that knife blade acacia, and more eucalyptus, the long eucalyptus, the long foliage eucalyptus, and then some protea and banksia, and all of that was grown in San Diego by a company called Resendez, and they're growing Mediterranean and South African and Australian plants in San Diego because the climate is identical basically to those regions. So they're not native, but they're climate appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I was really impressed with when you really start to open your eyes and look around your neighborhood, the plants that you can find that have just great texture and color, and it's just all kinds of opportunity out there.
That's what Fran and I were talking about the other day, just as being an observer, which none of us take time to do.
Right. I hope our audience tonight will stop by your website at slowflowers.com. I think it's kind of neat how you have a directory on there with farmers. That kind of helps to find a grower. And so if we're shopping for, say, conifers, cut conifers, what should we look for?
Do you mean for doing holiday decorations?
Yes, to make sure it's healthy, so we get the longer life out of it. Is there anything to look for?
Well, ironically, I think you'd use the same skills as choosing your Christmas tree. If you're brushing your hands up and down the branches and the needles are falling off, you just immediately say, "Forget it. This was 10 weeks ago."
Okay.
It's really hard to find sources of cut greenery at a grocery store or something. It's just, occasionally you'll find it, but for gardeners, we're lucky that we can at least prune our shrubs or glean from our, when we're cleaning up our own garden, or in my case, winter storms knock down so much stuff into my driveway. I don't put it in the compost bin. I see what I can use in a vase, and that's super fresh if it's been knocked down by a storm. But I really just think, you know, if it's pliable and has a little bit of a sponginess when you squeeze the needles, and you know, then you may have to clean off some of the dead branches, but there should be some good life in those. Either stuff you find out in your own yard or in your own neighborhood, or if you're lucky enough to buy direct from somebody who's bringing it to the floral industry.
Now, Deborah, you wrote 2 books. Is that right? That you have out?
I've written a bunch of books, but these are my 2 most recent ones. Yeah, okay. Slow Flowers, and then the 50-Mile Bouquet is the other one that is really the story of flower farmers.
4 seasons of locally grown bouquets from the garden, meadow, and farm. And then here's your 50-Mile Bouquet. Right,
and that book was photographed by David Perry, who a lot of people may know through social media, and he's a Seattle photographer, and we really got kind of swept up in this whole passion for meeting flower farmers and telling their stories, because they really are unsung heroes. They're kind of the faceless, you know, hard workers behind those beautiful flowers.
All right, well, I'm going to come out. Oh, go ahead.
Change the way I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Fran.
No, I was going to say that book actually changed the way I started looking at flowers. I had read Amy's book years ago, Flower Confidential. Yeah. And then when Deborah's came out, that she really grabbed my attention with that book. I highly recommend it. I mean, Slow Flowers also, but if you just want to get a taste of the movement, the real movement of these people, they're extraordinary. I mean,
thanks, Fran. Yeah, and Fran, you wrote about it for, you did a Q&A with me for...
yes, I did.
Blog, yeah. And I have to say, Amy Stewart really did start this conversation with Flower Confidential back in 2007. At the end of her book, I really was inspired to say, what's next? And, you know, she really raised the awareness, but she didn't necessarily offer all the solutions. She was just creating a dialogue. And so it gave us a chance, with Amy's blessing, because she did write the foreword to our book, gave us the chance to go in and say, okay, if you care about sourcing flowers domestically, we'll tell you who's doing it and who give you some inspiring examples of how to do it yourself.
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
It is. It is.
We have just a quick shout out to Lisa. She says, coming in late. Hello, all. Now we're going to go ahead and give away one of Fran's books later on, and so if you leave a comment or just a shout out and saying hi, then I'm writing your name on a little slip of paper and dropping it into a bucket. So now we have Lisa and Annie, so if anyone else wants to jump up and give us a comment or question, we'll love it.
That's great.
Well, why don't we shift over to Fran, your book, and I have some slides from you as well, so I can go ahead and disappear behind the slideshow again. Let me just open that up. And
Adam, are you seeing me on the screen?
Well, you know, you did disappear. We see your photo that is sort of a stock photo.
Strange. What do you think happened? Because I'm back on. I did disappear. I'd rather be live so that I can have a dialogue with people rather than just frozen. Is there a way? Oh, maybe that's it.
I'm not sure. There's a little thing on the top maybe that you can click for video. Otherwise, you're...
Ah, yeah. Turn camera on. There we go.
Clear?
There we go. Hi, everybody.
Yay!
Okay. There she is.
Good morning. I feel like I'm part of the Truman Show. Okay.
That's so much better to see your face.
Yeah.
All right, and here is your face again. So at fransorin.com.
Pretty face.
So what's happening here, Fran? This looks like a market.
Yes.
It is. And thanks to Debra in part, I've become very aware of buying locally. And whenever I can in Israel, it's easy. Philadelphia, I spend a fair amount of time in Philly, and this is in Center City, and we have a wonderful market right on Rittenhouse Square. And we have, actually, Debra, one of the women in the stalls is a partner. She is part of your slow flower movement, and I bought from her. And these fellows are Amish gardeners who come in, and they are the first to set up every Saturday, and I have never seen zinnias like this in my life.
Wow.
I mean, you just feel like you're in candy land. So I go out every week and I buy more than I should buy. But the point is, again, buy locally, and my big push is for people to start bringing flowers, cut flowers. Obviously, if you have a garden, you have a cutting flower, a cutting area. And if not, buy. Give up the coffee to Starbucks for 2 days or 3 days. This will bring so much pleasure and beauty into your life. So I'm somewhat of an evangelical gardener and flower lover. And again, this is in Israel, where I'm very lucky because the cost of just these Gerber daisies, I get 20 for 20 shekels, so I'm getting right now, this time of year, 20 Gerber daisies for $5, which is pretty amazing.
That's
Is that
I'm sorry, what, Deborah?
is that a trend over in Israel? I'm just curious, do you see more cut flowers over there than you did in years past?
Yeah. Oh, sure. Cut flower is a huge industry, and a funny story actually is in Holland, like 5 years ago on the Holland, it was for a press tour, and I was at Keukenhof and bought some amaryllis, thinking, oh my God, I want to bring them back to Israel. Lo and behold, I mentioned it to Jacqueline Vanderkloor, who was with us, and she said, Franny, they're from Israel. Israel does. So Israel has a big trade of exporting bulb amaryllis. The flower industry, I don't know how much we export, but it's a very big industry here, and a lot of cutting-edge things in hotels. Some of the arrangements here are just outstanding.
Wow.
But the point is, it's very accessible, and wherever you live, it's accessible. You have to source it out, though. You have to be smart enough to make it a priority and not just walk into the florist and say it's too expensive, or even into a grocery store. Take the extra few minutes or half hour one day and source it out and find somebody at your farmer's market or whatever, and treat yourself. This is when I bring flowers home. Every week I go, and at least once a week. And my big philosophy I call playing with flowers, and this I just threw together the other day. You bring if it's $10, $15, just buy a slew of flowers, bring them home, put them in the sink, and start bringing out your containers. And I don't have a lot here in Israel, but in Philly, I use soup tureens, anything, jugs, anything can be a container. And the whole idea in this exercise is what I call playing with flowers. It's just having fun, but also slowing down, Deborah, and using it as a meditation. On many levels, this is a very profound exercise where you can, in half an hour, 40 minutes, just learn so much, and literally it is a form of meditation.
Amen, sister.
Absolutely.
So what I did here, because I started, hey, Deborah, we're going to do something together. We'll see. What I did here, because if anybody who's on the call is probably a gardener, and also, this is a great tool for honing your eyes as a gardener, as far as colors and shapes. So what I did here is just lay out, when I bring in different flowers for you guys to see, putting different tones together, and how does it affect it. And, there's a great book by Christopher Lloyd from maybe 10, 12 years ago, where he shows his long border in different seasons. So you really see how something looks with color, with texture, without. And sometimes more color isn't better, less is better. It just depends on who you are and what makes you happy. And the bottom line is, it should, So this is just showing you simply Gerber, and I think that's a ranunculus. I can't quite see.
I think it's an anemone.
Oh, it's an anemone. Thank you. That's what I have too. Magenta and anemone, which, by the way, are in bloom here right now.
Yeah. And there are ranunculus in that one.
There are the ranunculus. So for me, this kind of the anemone on my computer right now kind of looks like the Patty's plum, poppy, whatever. But again, the softness of these pinks, it gives you great ideas for the garden, and then different shapes. So again, just showing you that. We can move through quickly on these.
It's gorgeous, Fran.
The These are asters, these little guys. I had never seen them up in the corner. We're going back, the purple up there are the asters, which I don't love. I wanted to bring the purple in, and I wouldn't use those flowers again. But Adam, go on. You were going on to, I think the next is the bitter, that kind of, that's a ranunculus. And I'm a big fan of that color in the garden and in bouquets as well.
Wow.
Beautiful.
And tulips.
Tulip, purple tulips.
We're all having tulip envy, Fran.
This time of year, you know, when I go in, it's so funny when I go into the stalls and I say, okay, how much? And they look at me and it's 25 shekels, which is about $6 for 6 of them, which is a lot here now. You know, this time of year, it's expensive. But hey, you got to have it.
Oh, beautiful.
Okay, so for me, you know, when I see that, it gives me guts in the garden to think, which I've been doing for years now. But purple and that orange, it's golden yellow, whatever you want to call it, sunrise, for me that's heaven. And I think it can give people courage to say, okay, that's really awesome. And the beauty of cut flowers is you have them for a week to play with and to look at and gaze and meditate on. So you can let it sink into your senses and say, oh, wow, you know, it's just gorgeous. And by the way, Debra and I were discussing this the other day, that cut flowers, it's known that flowers literally have an effect on your personality, your happiness factor, stress, feeling more secure, feeling more open, feeling more connected. So the psychological effects are profound. And this is just something, these were already, by the time I did this yesterday for this, these guys are already flowers from Friday. So this was Tuesday. So I'm constantly cutting back, every day, cutting back and rearranging to get different looks. So these flowers are old already, but I get them to last about a week. Debra, I don't know with you when you do it, how long yours last.
Yeah, you know, I think one of the surprises about supporting the local flower industry is that those flowers are fresher than if they were imported. So they are going to last longer because they weren't on a jet plane for, 72 hours to get to you.
Yeah.
And there is something so exciting when you meet these growers and you think they're literally coming from their place to yours. It's such a connection. It's such a profound connection. And that, it's a tough picture to see, but it was just some of the different arrangements. And I've mentioned it before, and I didn't have time yesterday to go into my garden. I had taken these from the purple hyacinth bean vine. And I do use from my garden, I mix edibles and different, not just flowers. If I had time to put my Panicum virgatum fluorescence in, and I had some charred leaves I would have put in and the red roots full. But have fun. I mean, take stuff from your garden and mix it in, even, as Debra was mentioning, greenery, whatever you have. So it's really the whole thing about playing with flowers is slowing down, and no tech allowed, absolutely no TV, no phones. You got to turn it off. Got to get a cup of tea late in the day, get a glass of wine, put on music, and just be with this. And it really, I hate to sound hokey, it's the truth, but it can change your day. It can change your life.
I don't know about putting the phone down. I really enjoy tweeting pictures as I'm doing it.
Sorry. You know what? For you, Bren, that's a separate issue. For us, you're right. I try to photograph. I do try to photograph. And this is one of the exercises. Actually, I'm doing workshops. I've been picked up for art therapists quite a bit now. I'm part of this group, and I've been giving workshops using the cut flowers and edible container gardenings for them to begin to use in their practice as art therapists. And playing with flowers is one of the exercises I have in my book for Digging Deep. So therapeutically, for us, you don't need to be an art therapist or a therapist or horticultural therapist. The effects are phenomenal. And my book, Digging Deep, I really love. It's the 10th anniversary edition, and it really is about inside out. You have the old one, It's the inside out process. I call it the wisdom inside out. And that's it.
Wait, Bren, you want to hold that up again?
Yeah. So, Fran.
No, don't advertise. A Hachette is still selling that, and their sales are going up on that. Here it is.
Now, Fran, you kind of answered a question I was going to ask you about keeping the cut flowers fresh. So you're going to cut these. I usually cut mine at an angle. I don't know why. I just do that. How much do you usually take off? Does it matter?
Well, initially, Deborah, you may know more about this than I. Initially, when I get home, I just take off Gerbers automatically. I take off 2 inches. They're very long, and they need to drink that water up. But initially, I just take off the amount I need, and I also am sure to pull off all the leaves so that they don't submerge in water. But as I continue throughout the week, let's say every other day, it depends. It may be an inch. It just depends, Deborah. It's the health of the stem. Deborah, I don't know if you want to chime in on that.
Sure. Well, a couple things. One is it's often, Bren, determined by the vase you're choosing, which I think is what Fran's photo showed, is that by the time she got to that lime green cube, it was later in the life of those flowers, so they were naturally shorter. But as I do say in my workshops, it's always easier to shorten a stem than lengthen a stem. So don't trim too much off to start until you know what your vase is going to be. The cutting on the angle, Bren, is a way to open up more surface area of that stem to drink water. Just, and some stems do drink all the way up and down the stem too. Not all of them, but hydrangeas, for example, you want water all the way up to the neck because they'll absorb that water along the side of the stem as well. A lot of back to experimentation, right?
Yeah. I was doing something right.
Now, Deborah, on your website, Slow Flowers, you have a directory of, I guess, a lot of flower growers that around the country. And I was just wondering a little bit about how, if we go out and we want to buy some flowers and we want to buy them locally, maybe you could talk a little bit about how we could use your website, or how do we find local sources, or do we know that they're local sources? Sure.
Well, the site can be searched by zip code or state or city or category. So especially if you're trying to find them in a specific area, use the zip code, and you'll get the results based on a 50-mile radius. Sometimes I just search by the entire state because some states have lower population and there's just not as much available. Like Nebraska, I have like 3 members, I think, and I'm thrilled that there's that many. Then you can click through to their website. You can read. You can possibly read about their specialty, and then the keywords are, like, say you really wanted to have someone do local delivery. Well, there's only people self-identify, so you really want to search only by local delivery. And then because I'm cognizant that this is a new site, it's only I launched in May, so I have 433 members on the site now. But I'd like to get to 1,000 by the end of next year. But because we're still building, I have a very obvious band on the homepage, which is people who are shipping American-grown flowers overnight anywhere in the country. And while, of course, there is a carbon footprint for someone on the East Coast to order flowers from California, I always recommend you're only doing that if you can't find local flowers. So it's like a pebble in the pond approach. Your first choice is your own garden, and then maybe your own community, your own state, your own region. But I still believe that for at least for my audience, which is people living in the U.S., American grown is a more sustainable choice than imported, even if those flowers have to come from on a truck or an airplane across the country. So I hope that answers your question, Adam. I'm not an e-commerce site. You can't buy flowers through slowflowers.com. You can only, of course, I'm thinking like a writer. I print it. It's like a printed directory, but instead it's just online.
Right. No, that helps. I mean, I think it's. Oh, go ahead, Fran.
Oh, I was going to say it's a great site. I've spent time on it this past week.
Well, Adam, thank you, Fran. And I know, Adam, there are people in Ashland area of Oregon where you are on the site, and I think we talked a little bit about some of the farms that I have visited and love in Ashland area. But the important thing is that those farmers are selling to local florists, and so sometimes even if you can't find a florist, contact the farmer because they can tell you who's designing with their flowers in their own community.
Sounds good. Good plan. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, I think, to, maybe buy flowers from across the country. That's better than having them go from around the world. So.
Yeah, I mean, you're really going to do
Yeah.
that in the off season.
The other thing is, it really is about educating. And the truth is, think about it as a consumer. It's such a good feeling if you're spending the money to know that you're helping people locally. And you're also getting it fresh. So I think it's a win-win.
Absolutely. Let's see. Well, we didn't have any more comments, so if anyone wants to hop on really quick and join as an audience member and leave a comment or question, because we'll probably be wrapping it up in a couple minutes, and then we'll see. At this point, was it Annie or was it Lisa? So we'll do that in a minute.
Hey, why don't we do this? Give one of them Fran's book, and then the other one I'll send Flo flowers to, and then we are going to reward all of our fans tonight.
Awesome. Thank you.
I love it, Deborah.
Why not, right?
Very good.
My son asked me at dinner how many people were on this call, and I said thousands.
Right?
But I admire you guys for doing this. This technology is so challenging that just to get this hour together is super exciting to be part of.
Yeah.
It is, and Bren is, Adam, I don't know you well, but Bren is certainly the master. Each time I'm with her, I learn so much.
I think of it as, remember when we first started blogging, it was kind of like, oh, do I say that? Should I share that photo? It's kind of like what this is in a way. Let's see what happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We're early adopters.
Because I love the visual rather than just garden chat, which is wonderful. It's very fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is our 10th edition, so we've gotten this far, and it's been really wonderful just getting to reach out and connect with people from across the country, around the world, and I've been learning a ton and having fun with it. It is a bit of work putting everything together, and I was just sort of knocking on wood the other day that we hadn't had any technical, major issues, and so we were a little worried early on, but like it all came together. Well, I sure. Yeah. Well, I certainly appreciate Debra and Fran for you guys joining us and spending your time. It is really, really incredible. And did anyone have any last words or questions?
Well, I hope next week maybe they can watch a video or watch us live, because next week we're going to have a party. This is going to be a lot of fun. We've got some great.
What time is it, Brian? What time is it?
Adam, are we on? We go West Coast and East Coast. Are we East Coast this time?
I think probably we should do it at a good East Coast time, perhaps.
Okay.
Because if you're going to have
for you all, right?
Yeah. Well, we don't want you because we're going to have a little cyber cocktail and appetizer party.
Yeah.
And
how fun!
Yeah.
Those of you on the East Coast probably don't want to be, too late. So well, we'll set the time here pretty quick.
I think it'll be fun. You can learn new recipes with basic herbs and things like that during this event. With the holidays here, you might get some good ideas.
Great. I will come. I do have one question though for Debra. Debra, if somebody wants to send away, I know I used to do a fair amount of wreaths, and I would bring dried hydrangeas in and my Juniperus virginiana and a few other things from my garden. But to get some of the dried elements or fresh elements, are there places that people can use for mail order to get them from? Can you recommend any?
Yeah, there's a company on my site called Fabulous Florals. They're based in Carpinteria, Santa Barbara area, and they basically sell cut flowers, mostly California grown. They have a little California icon on every flower on the site. But at this time of year, they're bringing a lot of greenery in, and a lot of it is sold in bunches. So I would check out them, and it's not as widely available to buy just straight bunches, but they have it. And if it's someone's, I think by next year I'll be able to have more people doing that. It's a challenge because the cost of shipping is a little bit prohibitive. Creekside Farms in Central California is also selling a lot of straight bunches, but their specialty is already made wreaths and garlands. So that's another one that's on Slow Flowers you could find. There's a tab called I think it's called overnight delivery or something, and that's where you would find those people in that search category. Yeah, I can. If anyone does hear this and wants to know, they certainly can contact me, and I will help them source flowers. I get the craziest questions. I had a guy contact me who wanted to buy 100 stems of heirloom violets for his wife for their anniversary, and I helped him find the last cut. I helped him find the last cut violet grower in Northern California. So, they normally didn't sell to the public, but I've got some secret sources.
I have a little clip from an interview that you did. I think it was last year. I think it was with a Texas gardener interview thing. But I found it interesting. I think you said that 75% of cut flowers come from California.
75% of the domestic source of cut flowers are from California grown. Yeah, California's number one. That means
that's awesome.
Yeah, Washington State, where I live, is the second highest, but it's maybe accounts for 2% of all the domestic production. So California really rocks it. I mean, it's like where Fran lives. I mean, it's year-round agriculture, and the rest of us can only look on in envy.
It is pretty extraordinary in that sense.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and pull out. This first name will be for Fran's book. If I can find without not peeking, I'm just trying to get a hold of it. There we go. So Annie, and that leaves Lisa.
Oh, Annie Haven? Are we talking Annie Haven?
Yes, Annie Haven.
No, we got to switch. Annie has a copy of my book.
I was just going to say, I'm sure Annie has a copy of Digging Deep. Maybe we should
might have.
Well, I'll send another one to Annie if she wants to give it as a gift to somebody, but she and I will be in touch about it. That is so funny.
Okay.
Very good.
Well, Bren and Adam, if you send us each the name and the address of the person who won our books, we'll take care of that.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you. You guys are awesome.
And
Thanks so much.
And Adam, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Debra, always great seeing you.
Yeah, honey, I love it. 2 times in 1 week.
It's just the beginning, my love.
And Bren, you can go to bed now unless you're too wired from all that coffee.
I'm pretty awake, but you know.
All right, thanks a lot.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Somebody.